Have you ever felt emotionally exhausted? Not because life is too hard, but because you're constantly trying to be perfect for everyone, trying to be liked, trying to look successful, trying to prove your worth, trying to meet expectations that never seem to end. This is exactly the feeling that connects so deeply with The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck by Mark Manson. When I first saw the title, I honestly thought this would be another loud, aggressive motivational book filled with empty quotes. But once I started reading, I realized this book isn't about being careless or rude. It's actually about being honest with yourself and choosing where your energy truly belongs. What I loved most about this book is that it doesn't sell you fake positivity. It doesn't tell you that life will be perfect if you just think positive. Instead, it tells you the truth. Life is hard, you will struggle, you will feel lost sometimes, you will fail, and that's completely normal. And strangely, that honesty feels comforting. It feels real. It feels like someone is finally saying out loud what most of us already feel inside, but are too afraid to admit. One of the biggest lessons of this book is that we care too much about too many things. We care about what people think of us, how we look on social media, why someone didn't reply, why others are ahead of us, why our life doesn't look as successful as someone else's. And because we treat everything as important, we end up feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and emotionally drained. Mark Manson explains that the key to a peaceful life is not caring about more things, but caring about fewer things, and only about the things that genuinely matter. That idea alone can completely change the way you look at your thoughts and emotions. There's a part in the book where he talks about how we are constantly told that we are special, that we deserve everything, that we should always be extraordinary. But the truth is, most of us are just normal people with normal struggles. And instead of making you feel small, this realization actually feels freeing. Because when you stop trying to be exceptional all the time, you stop putting unbearable pressure on yourself. You stop comparing your behind-the-scenes life with everyone else's highlight reels. You start accepting yourself more, and that acceptance creates peace. Another idea that really stayed with me is that happiness doesn't come from having no problems. Life will always have problems. The real difference is choosing which problems are worth having. If you want a healthy body, your problem becomes discipline and consistency. If you want a strong career, your problem becomes pressure and responsibility. If you want meaningful relationships, your problem becomes communication and emotional effort. A good life isn't a life without struggle. A good life is a life where you are willing to struggle for the right things. That shift in mindset changes everything. The book also talks deeply about validation, something almost all of us struggle with today. We live in a world where likes, views, attention, and approval feel like currency. Slowly, we start measuring our worth based on how others respond to us. And when your self-esteem depends on other people, you lose control over your own happiness. You start editing your personality. You become afraid of being authentic. You overthink every word. This book teaches that you don't need everyone to like you. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need permission to live your life the way that feels right to you. That emotional independence is powerful. What I personally found very powerful is the way the book talks about failure. We are taught to fear failure, to avoid mistakes, to feel ashamed when things don't work out. But growth only comes through discomfort. Confidence only comes from experience. Strength only comes from struggle. Every strong person you admire has failed repeatedly. The difference is they didn't let failure define them. They learned from it. This book doesn't try to make you feel comfortable. It tries to make you stronger mentally and emotionally. Another hard truth the book highlights is that even when we say, "I can't help it," "I overthink," or "I'm just too emotional," we are still choosing where our attention goes. We are responsible for our reactions, our priorities, our boundaries, and our mindset. You are not responsible for everything that happens to you, but you are always responsible for how you respond. That level of self-awareness is uncomfortable, but it's also empowering because it puts control back into your hands. What makes this book different from most self-help books is that it doesn't try to make you feel good. It tries to make you feel honest. It talks openly about insecurity, fear, pain, loneliness, confusion, emotions that are real and human but often hidden. That's why it feels relatable. It feels like the author is not preaching from above, but speaking as someone who has struggled too. If you're someone who overthinks a lot, who feels emotionally drained, who seeks validation, who feels lost, who feels pressure to be perfect, or who is tired of fake motivation, this book will hit you deeply. It feels less like a lecture and more like a conversation that forces you to face yourself gently but honestly. A lot of people think this book is just about being careless, rude, or cold. But honestly, it's the opposite. It's about caring deeply, just not about everything. It's about having boundaries with the world and with yourself. And one of the most powerful parts of the book is when it talks about values. Because your values literally shape your entire life whether you realize it or not. Mark explains that everyone has values, but not everyone has good values. For example, if your value is popularity, you'll constantly feel insecure. If your value is pleasure, you'll feel empty when life gets boring. If your value is always being positive, you'll start hating yourself every time you feel sad. But if your values are things like honesty, growth, discipline, kindness, or courage, then even when life feels hard, you still feel grounded inside. This part really made me reflect on what I'm actually prioritizing in my life versus what I say I prioritize. The book also talks about how pain is not something you should avoid at all costs. We're living in a generation that wants comfort, instant gratification, and easy happiness. But real growth is uncomfortable. Real change feels painful. Real transformation feels messy. Avoiding discomfort might feel good short-term, but long-term it leads to regret. And I think deep down we all know this. Every time we avoid the hard conversation, the difficult decision, the uncomfortable discipline, we're also avoiding the version of ourselves that we could become. One idea I found really powerful was the concept of taking responsibility for everything in your life, even when it's not technically your fault. Not in a self-blaming way, but in an empowering way. Because when you accept that you're responsible for how your life feels, you stop waiting for people to save you. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You start asking yourself better questions like, what can I control here? And what's my role in this situation? That mindset alone can completely shift how you approach problems. There's also a part where Mark talks about relationships and how true connection only happens when you're honest about your flaws. We spend so much time trying to appear perfect online and even in real life. But the truth is, people connect with vulnerability, not perfection. When you accept your own insecurities, you become more relatable. You become more human. And the people who truly matter will stay. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Another thing that stayed with me is the idea that certainty is dangerous. We often want clear answers about everything and who we are, where we're going, what our purpose is, but life doesn't work that way. Growth comes from questioning yourself, being open to being wrong, and constantly evolving. The most intelligent people are not those who think they know everything, but those who are willing to say, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I can learn more. That level of humility is rare, but it's powerful. What I personally love is that the book doesn't promise transformation overnight. It doesn't give you unrealistic expectations. It simply offers a different way of thinking. And over time, that way of thinking changes how you feel, how you act, how you choose, and how you live. It's not loud motivation. It's quiet awareness. And that quiet awareness stays with you. If I'm being honest, this book didn't just make me think differently. It made me observe myself differently. My reactions, my triggers, my overthinking, my need for validation, my fear of judgment. And that self-awareness is uncomfortable at first. But it's also the beginning of real growth. If I had to summarize this entire book in one idea, it would be that your life starts changing when you stop trying to impress everyone and start respecting yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need clarity about what truly matters to you and the courage to protect your energy from everything that doesn't. And honestly, once you start giving less attention to things that drain you, you automatically start having more energy for the things that build you. That's where real growth begins.